I don't think I'm going to play a side or a total in this game, but I do think there are a lot of great props to consider. So let's start with receiving props because it does feel like even though these are two bad teams, we have some good offensive weapons that are going to be taking the field in this game. So let's start with CeeDee Lamb because I do think if you're looking for like a blue chip stock, it is CeeDee Lamb. He feels like he has the lowest or the highest floor of any of these teams. You could also probably say he has the highest ceiling because you look at his game logs this year in games that he's been healthy, 9 catches for 112, 5 catches for 110, 7 catches for 74, and 7 catches for 85. So even in his bad games, like the floor is still pretty high for him, but you are going to pay a premium like you do on blue chip stocks. So his receiving prop tonight, 89.5 for the yardage, juicy over at -115. But the catches is only 6.5. It's a little juicy at -145. I know some people don't love laying that juice, but here's the thing. Like the targets have always been there. He's had 12, 10, 8, and 11 targets this year. So even when he doesn't catch all of them, we know that Dak Prescott loves throwing to CeeDee Lamb. So I do think if you want somebody that maybe he doesn't get it just because, these numbers are high, but it does feel like he's not going to be far off. So I think if you're ranking like, the safest bets, it feels like CeeDee Lamb's up there.
Yeah, I mean this should be a game where CeeDee could have a big day. I think I'd probably look at the receiving yardage number more so than the receptions, just because, like you said, I mean it is juiced so heavily at -145. So I don't really want to lay that many juice for him to get 7 receptions. I think the receiving yard number would be a good one. And maybe look at some alts for Lamb. Him at 100 plus is plus 140, and this is definitely a defense where he could go off. I'm actually looking at the opposite because the Cowboys have been the worst team in the NFL this year against opposing wide receivers. But the problem is we know outside of Brock Bowers, the Raiders don't really have many receiving options. So you're like, is this going to be a Trey Tucker game? Is this even going to be like a Tyler Lockett game? Like, could he make some plays potentially? Are they going to try and use Genty more as a wide receiver and get him involved that way? I think Trey Tucker's probably the guy that I would look at tonight, though, for Vegas. His receiving number is at 46.5. I mean, Dallas is obviously going to do everything they can to try and take away Brock Bowers. I still think he's going to have a big game for the Raiders, but it's just, I mean, his receiving number, Chelsa, 72.5, and the over's juice -140. Like, there's just really no value there for Bowers. So I think either looking at Lockett or Tucker tonight for the Raiders, probably the way to go. And I think Tucker would probably be the guy. So if I were to take a receiving number tonight, just because of how bad Dallas has been against opposing wide receivers, I'd probably look at Trey Tucker.
Yeah, I think if you follow the grid where it's like fantasy points against, the Cowboys, like you mentioned, have given up the most fantasy points and receiving yards to opposing wide receivers. But I feel like when you have a tight end that almost, I know schematically it is different, but usually, when you have somebody like Brock Bowers, wouldn't you still target him like kind of in the same range as like a number 1 receiver? Just because he's the best player on the field for Las Vegas. So I think there is a reason why we see some of these props so high for Brock Bowers, because like 72.5 is the number tonight. His season average is 63. So, like, this is well above, what we've seen for the season. But odds makers are expecting, a bunch of points in this one. But I don't know. Last game, Tyler Lockett, surprisingly, had the most targets of any Raider. Had 6 targets. I think he was, like, fresh off the waiver wire or whatever it was. I think he came over from the Titans. Didn't even have that much time to practice with the Raiders. But he got the most targets, 5 catches for 44 yards. But do we trust this moving forward? Like, I don't look at Tyler Lockett and be like, oh, yeah, he's been revived into a number 1 receiver.
No, I don't think so. And again, it's all matchup dependent, right? So like the Jags, that's a favorable matchup. Obviously tonight, Dallas, but like we saw a couple weeks ago when the Raiders went up against Kansas City and they got shut out. I mean, it's all about Geno, and it's all about if he's comfortable. It's all about if he's going to put up yards and he's going to move the football. So if he has favorable matchups like tonight, then I think Tyler Lockett definitely could be a look. But if playing in the AFC West there, especially when you have to go up against Denver, the Chargers, and the Chiefs, Chelsea, those 3 teams are the 3 best right now in the NFL against posing wide receivers in terms of fantasy, or all the 3 teams in their division. So that's a big part too of why Geno has struggled. He's obviously had to play those teams this season, but I think it's all matchup dependent. So yeah, Lockett, like this might be one of the few good games to maybe target him tonight in some props. You mentioned CeeDee Lamb. George Pickens, I think, could be interesting tonight too. He's actually been really consistent for Dallas. And when Lamb was out is when he had his biggest games, and he hasn't caught a touchdown since Lamb has returned to the lineup. But he did have 7 catches for 78 yards against Denver. He did have 6 catches for 79 yards against Arizona. So Pickens has been really, really consistent this year for Dallas. And again, because the numbers are so juiced with Lamb in terms of his receptions and his receiving numbers at 89.5. I mean, Pickens is at 65.5. So Ferguson's production has dropped off a little bit with Lamb returning, but Pickens has stayed pretty consistent. So I think Pickens, probably if I was targeting a Cowboys receiver tonight, would be the guy that I would go with.
I feel like my brain always goes to longest reception for George Pickens because he does feel like he is that big catch guy. 23.5 is the number. And I understand like some of these feel easy, but a lot of it is based on like field position. But I will say this, he's gone over this in 3 games, has not gone over it in the last 2. But again, I think we're going to see a lot of back and forth action. So maybe something worth adding to the card because I do think we see fireworks tonight between both these teams.